There's actually a logical explanation why a lot of sci-fi features have a lengthy runtime. If your story centers around quantum physics, wormholes or aliens, and maybe even all three, the film will need extra time to set up how the world works. Obviously, there are plenty of short sci-fi flicks, but a lot of them aren't up to standard since they don't spend enough time developing the characters or the world they inhabit. However, there are some science fiction films that are mind-blowing despite the fact they don't even clock in an hour and a half. I'm Sci for WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 great sci-fi movies that are under 90 minutes long. Number 10. Silent Running, 89 minutes. Silent Running centers around an astronaut called Freeman who's assigned to a spaceship containing the remaining plants of Earth. When his superiors command him to destroy the ship's garden, Freeman kills his crewmates to ensure the plants survive. Consumed by loneliness, Freeman befriends the ship's robots to maintain his sanity. Despite his best efforts, it isn't long before the isolation starts driving him mad. Although many movies with a save the trees message can come across a bit heavy-handed, Silent Running gets away with it. Even though the sci-fi drama opens with an environmental message, it focuses more on Freeman's Sisyphean attempt to stay sane. Speaking of which, you have to applaud Bruce Dern for his phenomenal performance considering he spends most of the runtime by himself. In the hands of a lesser actor, Freeman's deranged behaviour could come across as unintentionally comical. But when you see Dern playing with the robots with utter sincerity, his commitment makes you take his plight seriously. As impressive as the set pieces and the visuals are in Silent Running, it's Dern's acting that viewers remember most, and those waddling robots. Number 9. Ark, 88 minutes. In Ark, Robbie Amell plays an engineer called Renton who's invented a machine which manipulates time. When a rebel group break into his house to steal the Ark device, Renton is killed in the scuffle. Moments later, Renton wakes up just before the robbers break in. Acknowledging the Ark has trapped him in a time loop, Renton keeps reliving the home invasion over and over. What's great about Ark is how it doesn't waste a second to get going. Instead of opening the movie with an exposition dump, Renton is murdered in the first 5 minutes. While viewers are still trying to figure out what just happened, the home invasion begins again, and again, and again. Now, starting a story in the middle can be confusing, especially when the plot revolves around the space-time continuum. However, jumping into the deep end works in Ark's favour since we're immediately invested in the protagonist's dilemma, despite not fully understanding it. Upon each cycle, we learn more about Renton, his killers, and the device. Because of how exciting and inventive Ark is, it's a shame it isn't more well known. Number 8. The Invisible Man, 71 minutes. When discussing science fiction, it's only a matter of time before H.G. Wells is brought up. Due to his work on War of the Worlds and The Time Machine, it's no wonder the Kent-born author is hailed as the father of sci-fi. Although much of his work has been adapted to film, people forget about the 1933 classic The Invisible Man. Despite receiving rave reviews, it was overshadowed by other monster movies at the time such as Frankenstein, Dracula and The Mummy. This is a pity since The Invisible Man has aged magnificently even after nearly a century. Because the lead star, Claude Rains, is draped in bandages to obscure his unseen body, you'd expect him to struggle to convey emotion. On the contrary, Rains is a wonder to watch, endowing every thrust, gesture and word with palpable conviction. Sure, his performance has more ham than a pig farm, but you can't deny Rains never ceases to be entertaining. If you thought the special effects would age badly, it's anything but. As you watch Griffin remove his bandages, you'll be baffled how such a scene was performed decades before the existence of CGI. Number 7. Safety Not Guaranteed, 86 minutes. In Safety Not Guaranteed, a journalist called Darius is assigned to investigate Kenneth Calloway, a grocery clerk who placed an advertisement in the newspaper asking for someone to time travel with him. Although Darius thinks Kenneth is weird at first, she quickly warms to him. The more time she spends with Kenneth, the more guilty Darius feels since she only took the job to poke fun at him. Because Safety Not Guaranteed has a lot of comedic stars, including Aubrey Plaza, Jake Johnston and Karan Soni, you'd expect it to be hilarious, which it is. However, every actor gives such an emotional performance you forget you're watching a comedy half the time. As strong as the ensemble is, it's Mark Duplass who steals the show. Rather than playing Kenneth like a complete wacko, he acts sincere while babbling about how secret agents are tailing him, which makes his harebrained scheme all the more entertaining. Even though the climax could have been a cop-out, Safety Not Guaranteed's touching ending is certain to melt your heart. Number 6. Attack the Block, 88 minutes. Before John Boyega and Jodie Whittaker became sci-fi superstars, they appeared together in Attack the Block. This sci-fi comedy opens opens with trainee nurse Samantha being mugged by a street gang led by Moses. After the area is invaded by aliens, Moses' gang and Samantha are forced to team up to protect the tower block they live in. Now, enemies being forced to ally against a common foe isn't a novel premise, but Attack the Block never feels cliche due to its tight script, surprisingly developed characters, and powerful performances. At only 88 minutes, the film ensures every second counts, especially when it comes to the nail-biting action. The aliens themselves have a simple but unsettling design which keeps viewers on edge. Because creature features are typically filled with idiotic characters, it's refreshing to see the ensemble make sensible decisions to stay alive. Attack the Block may have bombed at the box office, but it's become such a cult hit, it's no surprise there is a sequel on the way. Number 5. Chronicle, 89 minutes. Instead of having a convoluted and over-the-top plot like most superhero origin stories, Chronicle has a simple premise. 3 teenagers, Andrew, Matt and Steve, are endowed with superpowers after stumbling upon an alien artifact. At first, the trio love experimenting with their newfound abilities, but after Andrew becomes increasingly unstable, his friends are forced to stand against him. It's baffling to believe the guy who made travesties like Fantastic Four and Capone is responsible for crafting one of the most creative superhero blockbusters in, well, ever. There's no costumes, capes or quips. Director Josh Trank strips away all the tropes to focus on the dynamic between the 3 leads. Dane DeHaan and Michael B. Jordan are so charismatic you can see why Chronicle helped launch their careers. By telling the story through found footage, everything feels more personal. Whether our characters are having a heart-to-heart or tearing up the city, you feel like you're in the thick of it. If you're suffering from superhero fatigue, and who isn't nowadays, Chronicle will feel like a breath of fresh air. Number 4. Primer, 77 minutes. With its head-wrecking narrative, unexplained paradoxes, endless timelines and its tech-heavy dialogue, it's sensible not to try and understand Primer. This psychological indie was made to be experienced, not comprehended. The story centres around 2 engineers, Aaron and Abe, who decide to test a time machine they've accidentally created. Because the budget was under $10,000, Primer has none of the flashy effects you'd expect from a blockbuster. Despite being made for peanuts, Shane Carruth's directorial debut is more thought-provoking than a dozen $200 million sci-fi epics put together. Its minimalism benefits the film since the lack of CGI and sprawling set pieces don't distract viewers when they're trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Primer is so dense it's easy to assume the plot is pure gibberish. Only by watching it 3 or 4 times or even more will you start to scratch the surface. Number 3. Fantastic Planet, 72 minutes. Fantastic Planet takes place on the world of Yam, which is inhabited by colossal giants called Draags. Years ago, the Draags transported Oms, humans, to their world to serve as pets. After an Om called Tur escapes from his owners, he encounters a nomadic tribe of Oms in the wild. Tired of their oppressor's tyranny, the tribe prepared to revolt against the Draags. Because of the psychedelic and dated animation, it's understandable why you might think Fantastic Planet isn't your cup of tea, but if you watch it for a couple of minutes, you should be gripped by its touching and deeply harrowing message. Although the subtext of animal rights and racism is impossible to miss, the film balances its themes perfectly, never throwing it in your face. Rather than showing hatred towards the Oms, the Draags look at them with indifference or mild amusement, which somehow feels more cutting. Simplistic animation benefits the film since the Draags' minimal movements and blank stares keeps you unnerved even when they act polite. Number 2. Westworld, 88 minutes. If you are a fan or were ever a fan of the Westworld TV series, it's high time you track down the film which inspired it. The 1973 original revolves around a robotic amusement park that allows patrons to live out their fantasies. 2 customers, Peter and John, visit the Wild West section thinking it'll be fun to perform cowboys and robbers scenarios. But when a gunslinger android malfunctions, it begins hunting Peter and John for real. Although James Brolin and Richard Benjamin are solid as the leads, Yul Brynner carries the movie with his chilling performance as the gunslinger. With his piercing stare and smouldering swagger, Brynner fills every scene with unwavering tension. Because the premise is complex, it could have been easy for Westworld to zoom through the plot, especially when the film is under 90 minutes. Fortunately, Westworld keeps the action moving at a comfortable pace, never making the story come across as rushed or slow. However, one element in Westworld that deserves more credit is Fred Karlin's score. At first, the music relies on typical instruments you'd expect to hear in a western, such as the piano, harmonica, and the violin. As the story progresses, the tunes become more mechanical to emphasize the machines taking over. It may be a subtle technique, but picking up on it makes you appreciate this underrated classic all the more. Number 1. THX 1138, 86 minutes. Because George Lucas is synonymous with Star Wars, it's easy to forget the legendary filmmaker's first feature, THX 1138. Set in a dystopian future where all humans are controlled by mind-altering drugs, one individual called THX 1138 rebels against the system when he falls for a woman. Basically, it's the same plot as 1984, except that this has robots. Due to the premise and futuristic setting, THX could have been bogged down by forced exposition or an overly complex narrative. Luckily, this sci-fi classic keeps things simple. Rather than spelling everything out, the dialogue is minimal and hard to decipher, leaving a lot of scenes to interpretation. Many intense moments, like the radiation explosion in the beginning, are shown through scratchy computer screens, forcing us to draw our own conclusion with what's going on. However, the element that most viewers remember about THX 1138 is the atmosphere. From the opening scene, it's clear that this is a world governed by ruthless suppression. The barren aesthetic and ominous music constantly gives off a sense of hopelessness. The androids look silly by today's standards, but you can't help tensing up every time they show up. It may have done badly with critics and the box office when it premiered, but it's obvious nowadays why THX 1138 is revered so highly. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video in the comments below. Which of these movies do you appreciate the most? And of course, let us know of any other great sci-fi films that run under 90 minutes long. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I've been Sci-Fi What Culture, and have a good week.